Hi guys, welcome back to the garden. If you've never been here before, my name is Pip, and today we are going to be cleaning up a whole bunch of pots or containers. Now, it's not looking promising weather-wise behind you, so we're just going to get as much done as we possibly can, but we are nearly a month through spring, and these pots have been in desperate need of cleanup for a while, and we have another week of rain forecast, so we'd like to get things done before then. We've only had a 2-day break from the last week's worth of rain, so things just need to get sorted. I was planning on starting up on the deck with the pots up there because I need to put some flowers up there pronto. My strawberries are flowering up there and the bees have not noticed, so I need to draw some bees up there so I can get some strawberries. But because the weather's looking a bit dicey, I'm actually going to start with these pots and cleaning them up, cleaning some of them out completely, and I'm going to be harvesting a lot of the straw flowers. Sorry, that is the dog with a soccer ball. I'm going to harvest a lot of the straw flowers along the pots and along the garden. But the plan for these amazing straw flowers is to dry them and then use them to create an amazing Christmas tree. I had saved a whole bunch already to decorate my Christmas tree with, but we've had a couple of flood level rains this year and they, along with everything else, went moldy. One of the first pots I want to get to is this one. I planted a little lemon tree in here and it's trying so hard, but it also had a very small bunny tail plant in here from last season. And my word, has it grown. But you can see these beautiful furry blooms. They just feel so nice to touch. And even the leaves feel amazing and soft. But I'll be drying these out and adding them to the Christmas tree. But the poor lemon tree needs to be saved 100%. Then there's this monstrosity. So underneath here are Dahlia tubers that I grew from seed. Hopefully they will turn up at some point. But you can see there's some fairly leggy straw flowers that may need to go, but at the very least need to be harvested. Ugh, there are these weird little fly bugs. I don't know if you can see them, but they're all over the place lately. Something about being coastal. I've never had so many aphids or so many of these fly bugs. And yesterday I walked through someone's backyard and got covered in them. Sorry about that bird, that crazy bird you can hear. They are called plovers, and they have these tiny little babies that look like a miniature powder puff, and they're all running around town. And the birds go crazy like this when someone is near their little baby. Most of the time they'll run and attack you on the streets. Somebody else is going crazy too, but they'll run and attack you on the street to try and distract you from their baby, and they're so cute. They're literally like little powder puffs. Parents, not so cute. So let's get this started, and I am going to tune out the beautiful sounds of that plover with some music. All the straw flowers are picked. Let's head inside and pop them in, and then we can get started on cleaning out all the containers. I'm always amazed how nature somehow finds a way to continue on, even against the odds, even in difficult circumstances or in crazy weather like we've had. I started off cleaning out the pots by going through and finding the seeds. I was amazed by the viola seeds. They're so beautiful, and I've just never noticed them on violas or pansies before. I also collected snapdragon seeds. These particular snapdragons somehow have lasted over 2 seasons, and I've been collecting seeds the entire time. It was, however, my first time harvesting the pink and apricot snapdragon seeds, and I hope to be able to grow them again in the future. Most of the pots needed a fair workover given how wet the last 12 months have been. But this pot in particular, with my flannel flowers, which are the most beautiful Australian native flowers that feel soft like flannelette, it has really been struggling. My other flannel flower plant is actually doing really well in a pot where I thought it would struggle because it would get watered more because of the other plants it was incidentally planted with. However, it looks a lot healthier, so I decided to pop in some petunias and some of my cosmos in alongside the flannel flower to try and help absorb some of the excess water. As you can see, this plant, while not perfect, is certainly infinitely happier and about to produce some beautiful flannel flowers, and it's in amongst a whole group of annuals. So today was the day. It was time to try and pop the petunias in and hope that it was going to turn things around for this poor little flannel flower plant. It worked out well because I had a ton of leftover cosmos because I was going to plant them in my best friend's garden, but she's actually doing some renovations now, so she doesn't need them. So hopefully these will make the bees happy and make the flannel flowers happy, and that would make me happy. As always, my happy little garden assistant was more than willing to get involved and help me dig up the dahlia tubers. I could have left them to bloom again. These were dahlias that I'd grown from seed, but I decided in the end that I didn't want to go through another season with them. I wanted to put in something different. I'm wanting to prioritize food, and the growing space in this house is quite limited, so it was time to pull the dahlia tubers out and use that pot for something else. Even though they could have quite happily gone another season, the straw flowers in here were looking rather rubbish as well. So I just wanted to have a fresh start, and in the end what I've planted in this pot was more silver beets or Swiss chard, and I put one iceberg lettuce, which has since been mauled by a rabbit, or so I suspect. But I'm just hoping to prioritize food, although I would dearly love to have a garden full of flowers, because that's the ultimate goal for me, a cut flower garden. They were self-seeded snapdragons around the base of this orange tree, but interestingly, the root has intertwined itself with the orange tree, so I can't actually get it out. But, oh well. So I spread some more snapdragon seeds underneath. Helps bring the bees. These Goldilocks sedums, I have made so many cuttings from them and put them in so many different gardens. I think I'll probably put some more in my house in Sydney, but Rafa, I think, has spread them now all over the garden. But I needed to find some place to plant all the tomato seedlings that have been successfully germinated. I've really struggled with my capsicums, my cucumbers, my basil, but my tomatoes have been doing really, really well. Even tomatoes grew over winter, so it's pretty incredible, and I'm really hoping to get a great harvest and to really learn more about food preservation. I was really happy with how this pot turned out. This was a basil that had died and the rosemary, and this was where all the Goldilocks sedum was. So now you can see it is a iceberg lettuce, which again got chomped by a little bunny rabbit, and some leek alongside the rosemary. Something I was really happy about was how many worms I found. I was expecting to toss this pot of mustard out. I never picked any of it, never tried any of it, but it was full of worms. And so I grabbed a few that were on the top and popped them in pots, and then I decided that actually this soil wasn't as root bound as I thought it was. And so I decided to pop it in the compost bin, where again there are a surprising number of worms in there, and I'm kind of amazed that there are so many worms, because you don't expect them to kind of come crawling up into the compost bin to do their thing, but they must do. So in the compost they went, and hopefully they'll be able to continue their happy life in this garden. This lemon tree and the bunny tail, I managed to separate them, but who knows if this giant, massive mess of a plant will actually survive. I only had a teeny tiny pot to shove it in, so I guess we'll just wait and see. I managed to get half the pots in this area done before the threat of rain got too much. I planted some of my green potatoes in amongst the garlic to take up the space where garlic had died. My rosemary plant got tidied up, and this is some yarrow and something else which I can't remember what it was, growing from years ago. There's more potatoes, lots of garlic coming up, although I don't know if it'll actually bulb because I planted it quite late. My little yellow tomato. There are some beets and some onions in here that don't appear to actually be bulbing. I think sometimes packets say you can grow them over winter, and perhaps you shouldn't. Some more beets that don't look like they've been doing much, and I think again that's because our sun in winter was so minimal with all the rain. Got some carrots that are very densely planted, so we'll see how they turned out. Most of my carrots have been wrapped around each other, regardless of whether I've thinned them or not. Here is that sad little flannel flower plant in with its slightly happier buddy, and hopefully they will soon be happier. I got this job done just in time before more rain came and flooded our house. Again, lots of cosmos planted in these pots. I'm going to have to move these beautiful hellebores and the pot next to it, which is filled with my silver beets. I was hoping that my cottage flowers that grew much taller than I expected and now look like Cousin It were actually going to shade it based on what I'd seen during the day, but unfortunately Cousin It is just slightly on the wrong angle, and the sun is beating down on these guys for about 6 or 7 hours, and that's just going to be too intense for them, and they've already also been mauled by the bunny rabbits, so I'm going to have to do some more work on this pot, but for the time being I'm hopeful that it can turn into more Swiss chard or silver beets for me. My orange tree is looking fantastic and really happy, and hopefully those snapdragons bloom underneath it once again, and we're back at the rosemary and leek. I'm always amazed by how well nature does in continuing things on herself. underneath this yarrow, which is still yet to bloom 2 cycles on, and the garlic, I found a little self-seeded Cosmo from the flowers that I planted a few months ago. The storm kept getting closer and closer, and we actually had a huge amount of rain for the next couple of days, so I couldn't continue the pot cleaning out efforts until a few days later, when finally we got a break in the rain for a little while. There were tons of leeches in the garden, which was absolutely disgusting, but at least it gave me a chance to see whether this netting over the lettuce would prevent potential bunnies from eating it, or whether it would show it up to be slugs that were just super hungry. And as I suspected, it was bunnies coming along and having a massive feast. But as you can see, parts of our garden flooded, and I know that this is really insignificant flooding compared to many other places, but we actually live on the top of a hill, so having this much water is pretty crazy, really. On the plus side, it did fill Ravi's paddling pool, so he was delighted. Until a week ago, I thought these Brunnera were dying. They look so miserable, but it turned out they just died off for winter and they've started re-emerging in the last week or so. But as you can see, this heuchera alongside it, it needs serious cleaning up, and so does the fairy garden I made for my niece. It looks like a cyclone has blown through town and destroyed everything. Surprisingly, the actual hut was still holding up really, really well, and everything just needed a tidy up. Love that to my niece, this is real. She tells people that I have a fairy that lives in my backyard. It's the cutest thing in the whole world. But I'm really happy that this little hut is still holding together, as is her beaded bunting. But these pots look so much better now that they've had a bit of a clean out and a massive tidy up of all the dead leaves. But there were a couple of other pots up on the deck that desperately needed work. The coleus somehow had kind of survived winter, and there'd been some Aquilegia or columbine that had self-seeded in here. I like to try and preserve as much as I can, so where I could, I just tidied up the coleus. And of course, the heucheras needed just a little bit of a tidy up, but they're still beautiful and perfect, and I love them so much. I also put in some of the Cosmo seedlings, mostly because they're huge and doing well and I don't want to throw them out, but also because my strawberries are nearby and I need to attract the bees, although this area might not get enough sunlight for the strawberries. I did manage to make some cuttings of the coleus, which I was a little bit surprised about, and they look really healthy and beautiful, so I'm hoping that by popping them in a vase for a week or two, they will grow some roots, and then I will have some amazing new coleus plants to take us through the next season, which is what I did last season, so these are onto their 3rd season. There's still a lot more work to be done in the garden, and I did struggle to film this video because I've lost my tripod attachment, so I could only really film by what I could land my camera on. But I hope you guys have enjoyed being in the garden with me and kind of seeing the evolution of these pots and seeing these beautiful flowers in spring and seeing the seedlings come to life. It's a pretty incredible and beautiful time in the garden. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you in the next one.